All right, so you saw the title of this video, and this video doesn't really have any like main point to it other than the fact that I just feel like ranting a little bit because I had to deal with the faulty SSD that I got. But at the time I didn't know that because I was desperate to get it to work. I bought a SSD about like 2 weeks ago now. I recently finally was able to acquire a 4 terabyte M.2 NVMe drive, and the one I got was the Samsung 990 Evo Plus. That's the one I got. It was a 4 terabyte and it was like $332 in total after shipping and everything from Amazon. And so when I first ordered that, it got here pretty quick. It actually got here like the next morning, which was pretty fucking fast. I didn't think it was gonna be here that fast. I ordered it late at night, like 11 or something like that, and it came in the morning at like 8 a.m. The same day I got it, I had to go to work first and I had to come back, and then I actually had to install it. And that was also a fucking doozy to deal with because I forgot my motherboard, even though it came, with the little screw and stand that you need to put for the SSD to be installed and seated. I forgot where I put that. I forgot where I put the shit. And of course, not a lot of people organize their shit, including me. So when I luckily, I am the type of person to keep the box of the stuff that I purchased, and I had the box of the motherboard that I purchased, and I still had all the stuff in it because I left it in there. Only I realized I forgot to mix it with a bunch of other boxes, and it's sitting in a shelf in the living room where a bunch of dust collects. And I don't know, I just don't like when my hands feel dusty and I have to like work on my PC doing that. But point is, I had to look in the boxes with a bunch of dust I had to blow off, and then I only realized now that it's like it took me forever to look for the tiny little piece, the little mount screw thing that you have to put on first, and then you can put the SSD in its slot and then push it down and then put the screw on top of it. So I finally found the piece after like maybe 20 minutes of looking. I opened my PC, the little metal plate that's in front, like the heatsink that you can put on top of the SSD. You don't have to put it on, I think, but I did anyways because I think it's recommended. I put the SSD in, I install it, I put my PC back together, I hook up everything, hook up all the cables, run that shit. Obviously, most people don't know, but when you do get a new SSD, you're supposed to go into Windows Disk Management or something like that, and you're supposed to actually format the drive so that your PC can actually use it. And I know I'm talking a little fast, but that's because I'm just, again, this is a little rant, but I got it installed and I finally was able to run my shit on there. And at first it worked great, it worked exactly like you'd expect, no problems. There was nothing wrong with it. I run a game, I put Marvel Rivals on it and I launched that shit and it runs just fine. And I thought, oh, okay, well, this is it. I can put all my games on there and I can finally install all the games that I want to without having to deal with the slow ass download speeds, and the loading times are much faster now. So it was all good from there. But then the next day after I got back home from the gym, because I went to go to the gym because I work out, I had a good nasty chest day, it was heavy, so I hit that 215 for like 4 reps. I am pretty strong. Obviously on my best days, on my good days, I usually lift 4 or 5, but that's not the point here. Point is, I came back from the gym ready to download the Battlefield 6 beta. I completely missed out on that, all because of this fucking SSD. And then I decided to go ahead and move over Fortnite to my new SSD, from my 1 terabyte SSD to my 4 terabyte SSD. So I did that, and I went ahead and tried to boot up Fortnite because I was kind of excited to see how Fortnite would run on the new SSD, because the new SSD that I got was supposed to be faster than the one I currently have. And then I was hit with this. The blue screen of death. If you know anything about gaming and PC and just in general building your PC, using your PC, when you run into problems like this, it would freak you out. It's just gonna freak you out. And so when I saw this blue screen of death, that feeling that hits you in your chest, that sinking feeling of, oh, you just know something is wrong, and now you're gonna have to spend the next couple of hours figuring out what it is. And I was like, fuck. I literally just moved every game that I had downloaded from my other SSD to this one. So if this drive doesn't work, I'm literally just gonna be fucked, because now I'm gonna have to basically just delete everything, format the SSD, and return it to get my refund and get another SSD. And I didn't want to do that. I really didn't want to have to deal with that bullshit. But unfortunately, that is what ended up happening. Now, before I did that, of course, I tried everything from updating Windows in case there was something stupid wrong with Windows, which, Windows is stupid in the first place because they always have problems like this. But, I tried updating, that didn't work. I tried updating my GPU drivers to make sure that was not something affecting it, but didn't work. When, you know what happens when you have a problem? You usually search it up on Google, and then the first thing that comes up is usually somebody on Reddit who had the same problem as you. Now, this guy had a Crucial SSD. I think that's what the brand name was. It was Crucial. And in his post, he said that he felt stupid because he did basically all these other things to his PC before realizing all he had to do was install the firmware or update the firmware for his new drive, his new SSD. You know, I thought for a second maybe that's all I had to do. All I had to do was update my SSD's, firmware, which was Samsung. Now Samsung, if you don't know, has this software called Magician software, and first of all, it's fucking terrible. I'm just gonna tell you right now, that shit is stupid and doesn't work, because I downloaded this, and in this application you're supposed to be able to find your SSD, and you're supposed to be able to update the firmware from there. But of course the software did not work at all, and it did not detect the new SSD drive that I just installed. So I had to go the roundabout way of having to get the firmware update on a drive, right? A USB stick. I put that in my PC and I tried to boot up the BIOS, and I tried to get it to load, and I could not get it to work because I forgot this, like the first thing that you're supposed to do when you try to, use a bootable drive to update firmware manually. And that was to make the USB a bootable drive. Now I used a program called, I think it was called Rufus. Yeah, you can just use Rufus. It just lets you create a bootable USB drive that you can then use in your BIOS or when you load up your BIOS. You can then actually use this to manually update firmware that you probably wouldn't usually do with just a software on your PC. But point is, I went back, I used Rufus, and I made the USB drive bootable with the updated firmware supposedly for my SSD drive. And when I ran the bootable drive, and it worked this time, it showed up, the black text, the very simple text on my top left corner of my screen. I followed the prompt, and it told me I had the latest firmware update anyways. So I wasted time doing that. So at that point, I really didn't know what to do other than to do the two other things that this guy said you could try to do. Maybe there was something wrong with my motherboard's chipset, maybe I needed to update those. So I did that. That didn't work either. So now I had to go and, open the Windows command prompt to like run a self-serve fixing thing. I don't even know what I did. I just did it anyways. Didn't find anything wrong with my PC. And then I decided maybe I needed to update my CPU firmware. Of course, it still didn't work. So after exhausting all of my options that I could think of for my PC, I just gave up. I called it quits, and I just decided, yeah, you know what? I think my SSD was just faulty. And I'm not joking when I say you tried to boot up a game. And first of all, it was weird because it was any game that had a anti-cheat, like Fortnite, with anti-cheat, easy anti-cheat, Halo with easy anti-cheat, or even Marvel Rivals with their own NetEase anti-cheat. None of it would work. Every time you try to click start or boot up the game, boom, blue screen of death, just right away. The game wouldn't even try to load. So the only games that would boot up properly would be games that didn't have an anti-cheat. Stuff like Street Fighter, that doesn't come with an anti-cheat installed. Or Ratchet and Clank, I also tried to boot that up as well. And that one looked like it ran okay. It ran fine. But for some reason with the Street Fighter, you could see visible stuttering. And I'm not talking about frame drops. I'm talking about the game itself would just slow down and then speed back up as if like a video was buffering or something. I don't know how to explain it. It was very obvious there was something wrong with this drive after I tested Street Fighter 6 on it, and I saw that issue. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna cut my losses. I wasted, I don't even know, wait, what time did I even start? I think it was like 3, 4, something like that. And by the time I decided to give up on trying to exhaust all these options, it was like 9 o'clock or something. So I'd wasted like 5 hours of trying to troubleshoot this issue with my SSD, but it just did not work. I don't know how it worked to read and write all these files into the SSD without having some kind of issue, but only when you boot up the game it had an issue. Again, I don't fucking know. If someone else can explain how or why this happened, go ahead and comment. I had to basically, with all my games installed on this new SSD, I had to just come to terms with the fact that this probably was a faulty SSD, and I had to format it and delete everything off of it. I had to wipe it clean so that I could return the SSD and start ordering the new one. And the problem with that was it was also annoying because now the new SSD took an entire week to get here, and I was basically left without all my games installed. I only installed 2 games back. That was Ratchet and Clank and Marvel Rivals. The new drive took over a week to get here, and apparently it was because when you look at the order and how the progress is going, apparently the delivery was delayed because somebody couldn't find my location, so they had to delay it, and it was the weekend and nobody works on the weekends. So now I had to wait till Monday comes, and nobody was still there until it turns out that they had delivered it to like the office, like reception or some shit. So that was annoying because now the office was closed because they leave at 5 and it was already 6. Now I had to wait the next day basically to go pick up my SSD from the office, and then I was just like, So it was so tiring. It was so fucking annoying to deal with. And in case you're wondering which one I got now, the one I got was the 990 Pro, the Samsung 990 Pro, 4 terabytes. And of course, it also cost me like 320 something, you know. But when this drive came in and I finally picked it up, right? And I finally received it, I opened the box and it turns out that they had sent 2 of these drives, 2 SSDs. There were 2 SSDs in the box. And at first, I was filled with jubilation. I thought they had accidentally sent 2 drives and I got one for free. And then it immediately died when I find out it's because I got charged twice. And that was why they took forever on the order, because they thought I ordered 2 of them. Oh, and then I had to deal with the process of having to do a return. And of course, because these are expensive technology pieces, they actually want the fucking drive back. You know how Amazon will sometimes just say you don't need to return an item, they'll just give you your money back anyways. Not for this. When it comes to expensive computer parts, they probably do want that shit back, so they actually make you have to go to like the process of going to the post office and having to then return it to them. So I had to do that, and now I finally got my drive. Now I got all my games downloaded. Well, not every game, because there's some games that I didn't play anyways, but it was easy to move it from the old SSD to the new one, or even from my hard drive to the new one. But I finally got that dealt with. And then like 2 days later, I see that there was actually a sale on the SSD I just bought. So whereas I paid 320 something for the SSD that I got now, the 990 Pro, Amazon put it on sale for 28%. So now it was only 270 with tax, probably like 280, 290 something. But that's the point, is that's money saved that I could have had. And of course that happens after I buy the SSD. I hate this fucking world, dude. Holy shit. I feel like I just have the worst luck sometimes. So all in all, I finally got the new SSD. I got my games. It worked fine. There was no issues. I was really about to lose it if I got this new SSD and had the same issue run again, because if that did happen, at that point it probably would have been an issue with my PC, and I would have had to just basically scrap it and get like a new one, or start building a new one and to just replace everything, because I don't know what would have been wrong at that point. Luckily that didn't happen. 4 days later, now everything is still running just fine. So hopefully that's the end of that. That was a fucking doozy to deal with. I hate the fact that I got my SSD only to get a faulty one, and then I had to wait a week afterwards just to get another drive to come in, only to get 2 extra and have to return the other one and go through that trouble. It was fucking stupid. But my new drive works fine. I can finally play all the games I want to play, and recently I actually installed The Last of Us Part 1, because I had actually bought that on sale like maybe 4 months ago when it was on sale, and I'm playing that now and I'm having a blast. And of course it runs great and it runs fine, no issues. All in all, I just kind of wanted to come up on here and rant about the fucking trouble that I had to go to. Moral of the story, sometimes you will actually get faulty equipment and it's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. My issue was just that the hardware that I got was actually faulty. I don't know. I really don't know if is that like a point to take? I don't even know if that's a point to like the story. I don't know. Point is, I wanted to rant. All right, that's all for now. See ya. Subscribe, bozo.